Hey everyone, Gabriella Huffman here to help you study for your real estate exam. We are still breaking down chapter 2. This is video 3 of 5. We're going to start talking about ownership of real property. First, we have severalty. If you look up the definition of severalty, it means the state of being separate. So if someone owns a property by themselves, they have ownership in severalty. Tenancy in common may be equal or unequal shares. Each tenant holds an undivided interest. On the death of a co-owner, the deceased interest passes through to their heirs. So survivorship is not possible. So remember, in tenancy in common, when someone passes away, their interest goes to their heirs. It does not survive in the original setup. Joint tenants, when someone dies, well, it depends. Is it a national or a state question? Let's start with the national. National side with joint tenancy, there are equal shares and right of survivorship. So what that means is when someone passes, their interest automatically passes to the other joint tenant. Notice how this person now owns it in severalty. You might get that on the test, a situation just like this. Two joint tenants, one dies, what happens to the interest? It passes to the other joint tenant. Now, how does this person own? In severalty. If you get a joint tenancy question on the state section of your exam, notice that there is a difference here. You can have equal or unequal shares. And survivorship is not automatic in our state. It must be written in. Therefore, on the death of a person, their interest will pass to their heirs. Another trick question you're going to get on the test regarding joint tenancy is when someone sells. The last slide showed when someone passes away, but we're not going to have someone pass away. We're going to sell their interest. So what happens is the person that decides to sell their interest to the new person here, this new person becomes a tenant in common, while the other two original owners remain as joint tenants. So a great question on the test would be, you have three joint tenants, one of them sells. Now, how is the property owned? The two original joint tenants stay as joint tenants, while the new owner becomes a tenant in common. Tenancy by the entirety is reserved for married couples only, whether that's husband-husband, wife-wife, husband-wife, married couples, spouses. There are equal shares, so it's 50-50. There is a right of survivorship, so when one of the spouses passes, it goes to the other spouse. Wills do not matter. We'll talk more about that in chapter 5. So the test is going to trick you and say that this spouse has a will. They'll name the children. That person dies. What happens? Doesn't go to the children. It goes to the surviving spouse. Now, your book does go into detail that spouses, married couples can choose a different form of ownership, such as joint tenancy or tenancy in common. Some other trick questions here is, what if the property was jointly owned before marriage or in severalty? Well, it does not automatically become tenants by the entirety by the virtue of marriage. If spouses own property as tenants in common before marriage, they will continue to hold as tenants in common unless they meet with an attorney to change that. On the test, they're going to ask you, well, what terminates a tenancy by the entirety? Death, divorce, which if you read in your book, leaves everyone as tenants in common, or a mutual agreement of the spouses. That concludes ownership of real property for Chapter 2. I'll see you in the next video.